Good morning. Welcome back. Welcome to the new and maybe not improved Hong Kong. We'll see what's happening. A lot is happening in the cinemas this week as the distributors keep trying to get us to come out. I think new regulations are announced today that I believe it was rumored. I haven't heard that it's true, but it's rumored that they're going to allow up to 80% capacity in our cinemas. So it just means more people can not go to the cinema. Nobody's going. But anyhow, in terms of what is opening here, what has opened here yesterday, and I think even some of the films opened the day before yesterday on July the 1st because it was a public holiday here. There's a film called The Last Full Measure. I think it's mainland Chinese. I can't remember. I haven't seen it. There's a Korean crime thriller mystery called Intruder. I watched it the other night. I got to write it up. I haven't written it up yet. There's I Am Here, which is a Korean, and I think it's a Korean-French production. I didn't see it. There's Beyond the Dream, which is a local production. Yeah, I've seen it. Oh yeah, I saw it a few weeks ago. I'll have to write about that one too. There's one called In My Heart. I have no idea what it is. And there is Whitney, which is the documentary, the latest documentary, because there's been others on pop legend Whitney Houston. I'm going to talk about that one right now. So Whitney, as I said, it is a documentary. If it sounds familiar, it's because it's from a couple years ago. But for some reason, it never came to Hong Kong. Or maybe I don't think it ever came to Hong Kong, but now it is. So as I said, the distributors are trying to find content, things to get us to come back. I don't know. This one's only playing in one cinema, so I don't know, and I not very often, so I don't know how many people are going to drag back. But anyhow, but you know what? With the situation in America getting worse. There came news this past week that the two of the big summer films that were supposed, well, I mean, look, it's a moving target, but the films that were supposed to come in the summer as of a few days ago, Tenet and Mulan, they've now been pushed off to August 12th for Tenet, August 21st for Mulan. As things go today, it might change again. So basically, summer's over, and it's only July the 3rd. So yeah, there's not a lot new that's happening out there, which is why we're getting Whitney 2 years later. So the story about the documentary Whitney, it's by British filmmaker Bruce MacDonald. He did the film The Last King of Scotland, which was about Idi Amin. That's the one where Forrest Whitaker won an Oscar. He also did a documentary called Touching the Void, which you may have seen, what was it, 2003 or something like that? So he hasn't made a lot of films, but he makes good films. And as I said, there's already been a documentary. First there was a biopic. Well, aside from the documentary, there was a biopic done in 2015. It was directed by actor Angela Bassett, of all people, and it was very disappointing. And then there was a 2017 documentary by Nick Broomfield and Rudy Dolezal called Whitney, Can I Be Me?, which I believe Bobby Brown sued them over. I don't know whatever happened to that. Maybe it was settled out of court. I don't know. But he did sue them. So, you know, it's if you've seen those two, it's reasonable to think there's nothing new to be learned here with this biopic. But if you do think that, you're going to be wrong, because MacDonald coaxes a bombshell revelation out of Mary Jones, who was Houston's longtime personal assistant. Now, it's since that time, you know, it's 2 years ago. Since that time, it's been widely reported in the press. But if you're not up on all things Whitney, I'm not going to ruin it for you. Because, look, I'm not up on all things Whitney, and I didn't know about it. It wasn't until afterwards, when I did my research, that I thought, oh, everybody knows about this. How come I don't know about this? Because I don't follow Whitney Houston's life and death and career and whatnot. So when it was announced, it was big. The documentary also contains plenty of revelations and insights into her life choices. I'll just tease one. For example, she was a drug addict from the time she was a teenager. which is something, again, didn't know. You know, she had this squeaky, at least from my perspective, she had a squeaky clean image until she met Bobby Brown. But that's really not true. So that was, to me, that was very interesting. I think, you know, watching this film, it's a very sad story, you know. It is a sad story. But perhaps even sadder is her daughter's story. Bobby Christina Brown, she never stood a chance. And that's really the tragedy. She's the victim here because of her life circumstance. Very, very sad. Now, tragedy aside, the film Whitney includes plenty of seminal moments in the singing legend's career. From her debut in 1983 on the Merv Griffin Show when she was just 19, beautiful, she sang Home from, what was that from? From The Wiz, I think it was from. Beautiful, beautiful. She nailed it. And she also sang the national anthem at the Super Bowl in 1991. Now that is especially interesting. Here's something, again, I didn't know, because she sang it in 4/4 time, whereas the national anthem is written in 3/4 time. So Ricky Minor, people who know American Idol, follow American Idol, he's I don't know if he still is because I haven't watched it in years, but for many years he was the music director of American Idol. He changed the timing of the anthem to suit her voice, and people were like, you can't do that, but you can, and he did, and she nailed it. So that was very interesting. Now, as someone in the film says, Houston was able to find things in songs that even the composers hadn't considered, and that's quite evident in her version of Dolly Parton's song I Will Always Love You. It spent 14 weeks in the #1 position on the Billboard Hot 100 chart and is one of the best-selling singles of all time. So, you know, even though Dolly Parton wrote it, Dolly Parton sang it first, everybody will always remember I Will Always Love You by Whitney Houston, the version by Whitney Houston. Now, I was living in Taiwan at that time. This was 1992, and it was playing everywhere. I remember one Sunday, I was working at the computer the whole day, and I had the music going in the background. What's the English language radio station in Taiwan? I can't even remember. But I remember over the course of the day, they played it 42 times. 42. It was like every half hour they were playing it. And there was one time I remember going into a stationery shop and it was playing non-stop on a loop. It was just like, it was the only song on the loop. It was playing non-stop. And I asked the cashier if she is sick of hearing the song all day, every day. And she went, oh no, we love Whitney Houston. Yes, we do. So there you go. Now, it was announced a few months ago that Houston's estate has authorized a biopic about the late singer. It's going to be called I Want to Dance with Somebody, but there's no word on when it will be ready. I guess, you know, with the COVID virus situation, won't be anytime soon, but that's the plan. So, as I said, it opened here it opened here, I think, on July the 1st, or maybe yesterday. It's only playing, as far as I know, it's only playing in one cinema here. It's not playing here that often. But you know what? It's also available on the streaming services. So, you know, whether you see it in the cinema, see it on TV, whatever, if you haven't seen it yet, it's worth checking out. Good film. Not a happy film by any means, quite sad, but a good documentary. So that's Whitney, about Whitney Houston. The other film I want to talk about is on Netflix, and it's probably the biggest film that's come out this week anywhere, and it's called Eurovision Song Contest: The Story of Fire Saga. This is Will Ferrell's latest comedy, and I think people might have been expecting that it was going to be a takedown of the Eurovision Song Contest, but it's not. It's not. So it's very interesting. If you don't know anything about the Eurovision Song Contest, it's huge. It has a TV audience. It takes place every May. This year it didn't take place because of the COVID virus, so it's going to be. It has been rescheduled for May of next year. Going to be hosted in Rotterdam, Netherlands. It's the country that wins the previous year gets to host it in the following year. So it was supposed to be in Rotterdam this year, of course, because of the situation. It's been put off a year. But the audience, I don't remember if I just said this, the audience for this event, it's a 3-day event, the audience is about almost 200 million people. It's like twice the size of the Super Bowl. And yet, most North Americans have never heard of it. Well, maybe they've heard of it, but they've never watched it. And I got to say, I've never watched it either, but I have friends whose daughter watches it religiously, and she live tweets it, or she live Facebook posts it. And so I guess because of her, I sort of know a little bit about it. I know, who the past few winners have been and where they've come from, but I'm certainly not going to win any trivia contest. Now, the story, Eurovision Song Contest, the story of Fire Saga. Apparently, they wanted to call it the Saga of Fire Saga, but I heard it didn't translate well into various languages, so they called it the story of Fire Saga. It's the story of Lars Eriksson, who's played by Will Ferrell. And from the time he was a little boy, he had a dream of one day winning the Eurovision Song Contest. And now he's a middle-aged man. He still lives at home with his widowed fisherman father, Eric, played by Pierce Brosnan. Everybody knows Pierce Brosnan. And Lars performs in a band in his hometown of Húsavík, Iceland, along with his best friend and possibly sister, Sigrid Eriksdóttir. In Iceland and many, I suppose Iceland's probably the most, where they have the son is called, let's say, Eric's son, which means his father's name is Eric, and you have Eriksdóttir, which means the daughter's you know what I'm talking about. There's Eric's son and Eric's daughter. So the running joke in the film is possibly they could be brother and sister. Everybody thinks they're brother and sister, but maybe they are, maybe they're not. Together, they're known as Fire Saga, and they apply to be Iceland's representatives at the next Eurovision Song Contest. And through a twist of fate, they get selected. Now, once they arrive at the event in Edinburgh, Scotland, their loyalty to each other is put to the test, particularly after Alexander Lemtov, who's played by Dan Stevens. I would say people probably know him best from Downton Abbey. He is Russia's representative to the contest. He's the favorite to win the whole thing. He shows more than a passing interest in Sigrid. Now, as I said, if you're expecting this is going to be a takedown of Eurovision, you're going to be sorely disappointed. If anything, it's the opposite. It's, the film does poke fun at the event's camp costumes and cheesy songs and over-the-top, staging, but it's really quite affectionate and respectful to the institution. And after watching this film, you're probably going to watch the real event, if only to compare the two. Now, there's lots of videos and discussions online about how they didn't get things right in this movie. It doesn't matter that they didn't get, I'm sure they know they didn't get things right. It didn't matter. In my opinion, it didn't matter. So, anyhow. But surprisingly, to me, this was what really surprised me about this movie. The songs are quite good. They're quite catchy. Particularly there's one song called Ya Ya Ding Dong. It's a bouncy tune that Húsavík's citizens are quite passionate about. And don't be surprised if it gets played on your local radio station. If it hasn't been played already, it's an earworm for sure. It's actually quite a good song. And even the closing song called I don't know if it's called Húsavík or if it's called Home. I'm not sure. Or Hometown. It's a really good song. Any of these songs would win. But anyhow, actually, Eurovision is not about the song, but it should be, but it isn't. Anyhow. The movie is, unfortunately, it's about 30 minutes too long. It runs just over 2 hours. I'd say it's about 30 minutes too long. It needed a lot of editing. But it's got some great performances, and the best one, in my opinion, is Dan Stevens. He steals the show. He is over-the-top portrayal of a wealthy, slimy George Michael wannabe. It's fabulous. He's got some great lines. He does a wonderful accent. He says it's a Chechen accent. I don't know, Chechen, Russian, I don't know, whatever. I mean, it really, really is good. Now, also I enjoy his Pierce Brosnan. He did a great job in this film. It's probably the best work we've seen from him in a very, very long time. And also, if you're a fan of Eurovision, your Eurovision winners and competitors, you're going to really like. There's one scene which is dubbed the sing-off scene, where quite a few of them show up to sing, and that's quite fun. I recognized 3 of them, but I think there's about 8 or 9 of them. So, unfortunately, the film's weakest performance comes from Farrell himself. He does his usual overgrown man boy shtick here. That's we've seen that so many times already. But I'd say, let's cut him some slack because he co-wrote the story along with former Saturday Night Live head writer Andrew Steele. So it wasn't so terrible that he was the weakest. I think it was actually quite good that you had other really good performances. Even Rachel McAdams was excellent. So this is Eurovision Song Contest, the story of Fire Saga. It's really goofy fun, and I think that's just what we need right now. I enjoyed it. You know what? I would watch it again. Even though it's 30 minutes too long, I would watch it again. So it's on Netflix right now. Definitely go watch it. That's all I'm going to talk about today because I haven't written up all these other films that I've seen this week. And even next week, let me just see what's happening. Oh yeah, next week I got 2 films to talk about that I've already seen. Oh, maybe 3 because I'm going to see a 3rd one this week. So look, they're just coming fast and furious, but they're not staying very long because they're not that good. Most of them are not that good. Okay. That's it. Have a great weekend. Have a great week. American friends out there, happy 4th of July. Please be safe. Please wear your masks wherever you go. And social distance. Be well. See ya.